Let me see here. All right, let's just. We're only going to have YouTube, Twitter. Let's see here. This is. We're only going to have YouTube. All right. I just want to make sure that this is working. Share Messenger. And there we go. Okay. So, yeah. What do you mean? I have stuff going on. I think evidently the whole world does.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I've been there last week.
What the hell am I doing? I was doing something. Okay, here we go. I got it. I just wanted to make sure.
There's a Facebook user that just said hi. Does that mean it's
What's
on
that?
Facebook? There's a Facebook user who just said hi. Does that mean it's on Facebook?
Yeah. Okay, well, shit. Hang on a second. Hang on, let me see something here.
Who got the stuff, man? I agree, Bruce.
It's showing offline. Okay, some of them are online. It's knocked off. So it is on. Oh, it's on Facebook. Okay, so we're on Facebook. Okay, it's on Facebook.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody, I just put up a post that said, "Okay, Facebook's working." Yeah, they're just having some problems. Facebook working. All right, well, anyway, we'll just say that. Well, if they come on YouTube, then they're seeing it. If they want to go to Facebook, they go to Facebook. Okay, so we can go to Facebook. I think what I've noticed today is I haven't really been on, but that. So what I've noticed is it seems to be slow. So like man, I'm getting freaked out over here. Okay, I'm just going to turn this off. So let's start over. What's happening?
Well, it suits my mood slow at the moment.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think this started. I got sick this past week, and we had to cancel. But Morgan said you were more than happy to cancel. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm coming out of 2 months of pneumonia, and
Really?
yeah, it's been really. You can probably hear I'm fairly nasally at the moment. For all you non-Australians, this is not my standard Australian accent, but it's a really deep inner, like it's moisture on particularly my left lung, and it's just sat there for 2 months, and tried a number of different things to shift it, and then last week I decided just to knock food, and I went on 6 days of a food fast, and actually sat on this couch for 6 days.
This was this past week.
Yeah. So when Morgan said, and I'd remembered that we had the call, and I thought, right, I'll be trippy. I'll be on a food fast, and I'll be like really spun out. But it'll be a really interesting call.
So what's a food fast? You're having water and what?
Yeah, just water and a warm tea, just to keep, because I get quite cold when I go on fasts. So and obviously dealing with pneumonia, I was trying to keep my chest warm and everything. So but the journey inside was really, really deep, and some of the stuff that came up, I got to see that white was all my left lung and everything like that. Like predominantly, there was a series of things. Firstly, just a shift in me now to even more stepping into what I'm meant to with my divine alignment. But secondly, it was an incredible amount of grief about the say this right. It was grief and rage in my masculine about feminine's abuse of my masculine, of the masculine.
Okay.
And if I talk, okay, if I talk historically before our authorized historical accounts, then we go back to an eon where it was the maternal, the matriarchy, and it was dominant. And the man was abused.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like that type of stuff, talk psychologically. It's the balance of the masculine feminine in me. And if one side of me is the abuser, then at one time it's abused. And if it's the abused, then at one time it's been the abuser. I can't recognize one thing of my psyche without tasting the other side. Otherwise, there's no recognition. It'd be like giving an alien an orange or something. They can't recognize it, so it doesn't exist.
Right.
So I was owning this part where and the rage, it was deep in a rage in my masculine at the feminine, but in going deep down and through it, where I came to was this place, which actually then took me on a genealogical inner child journey back into my male bloodline, where I didn't feel safe in my masculine.
Right.
And my dad was a Vietnam veteran, a priest, lovely man, farmer. I grew up on the farm, but I could trigger Dad really easily if I didn't want to be around him. Say a couple of things, bang, he'd lose his shit. But then quite regularly, he'd just lose his shit. Sometimes he'd just get up off the table and walk away because someone had said something that he didn't agree with or whatever. And he was just going through one of those ebbs and flows that post-traumatic stress brings on. But back then, he didn't have any help. There was no help able to help him. So what he did is turn deeper into because he was an Anglican priest. He turned really heavily to God. But there was an emotional element in his spiritual framework which wasn't dealt with, and that was and so that would cause these like angry outbursts. They were never, besides smacking me, they weren't violent. They were just intensely angry. And so I developed this thing within my masculine of not being safe, and therefore my feminine not feeling safe. So I was dealing with not only that bloodline thing, but also this collective consciousness thing about the rage in the masculine at the feminine for that abuse, and bringing the two together was actually just this beautiful union between the two, where they both own the both sides of the coin, and just came into what the Gnostics would call the bridal chamber, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. I think it's interesting too that on Monday you start this you're on the couch, and on Monday I'm on the couch through Saturday morning 5 a.m. Which was really Friday night for me. I also found out that Franco De Nicola, he went down because I talked to his partner Kimberly 2 days ago, and he went down on Monday. And he's still down, by the way. So all prayers to Franco. He's 8 days into it.
Yeah.
And so my thing was there was quite a few different aspects, in the narrative, I guess. People saying you've been psychically attacked, which I don't really resonate with. I don't look at it from that perspective, but I can understand the explanation. But anyway, I'm going to keep it short. When I worked out what I worked out, the way I experienced it was I looked to my left, and there's this procession of masculine beast and demons, and there was a progression of them. And it's nothing I hadn't been through before, but I hadn't done like a complete equalization of the two sides, since not to this degree. This was the deepest, but not to this extent, since 2016, like a month before I hit the road and started this. So I went through this procession and progression of these demonic, filthy, angry, hideous, evil, all those terms, knowing the drill. And I actually didn't know it was masculine until the very end. And so I got to the end, because each one of them was, hey, same old shit, a masculine type of energy. Are you scared of me? I can dominate, and I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm going to open my heart. I know how the game goes. When I got to the end, there was this like beautiful, dark, black night with red beady, red fiery eyes and like a demonic night. I looked to my right, and obviously this was a masculine energy. I looked to my right, and there's a masculine Archangel Michael, pure white knight type thing. So I thought, okay, I'm home. So I brought him in, and I hear like almost like a chuckle, like, oh no, 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 that's not it. That's not gonna do. So I look back to my left, and there was the most hideous, ugly, evil, scary, atrocious, I mean, you could imagine, like a big, just ogreish blob of putrid, So when I took that one in, I looked to my right now, and it was a 12-foot light being angelic feminine. So that was the only time I saw a feminine, was at the end of the road here. And so now I understood this was masculine and feminine. And the other thing that was interesting is they were on the opposite sides of where they normally are for me. Normally the masculine's on the right, the feminine's on the left. This time the masculine's on the left and the feminine's on the right. So I bring them in, and it took about 3 or 4 minutes. And in that moment, I knew this was I think Wednesday. So this would have been 2.5 to 3 days into severe, by the way, it was a severe physical, full body, just annihilation. Right. But so at that point, I knew what you're talking, like that to me, I knew energetically, I crossed the threshold.
Yeah.
And I knew that the physical part would still have to play out. But so that's interesting. That's interesting that's, it sounds like the same energy.
Yeah.
I didn't, see like the rage in specific and all that, but I mean, energy's energy. So anyway, my point is, it feels to me like it was the beginning. I think something we're still in of another huge integration, convergence,
Yep.
zero pointing.
And you're not the I mean, yourself, Franco, myself, we're not the only men at the moment that are experiencing this as well. It seems that right now, and I'm not surprised, just looking at the outward expression of so-called reality, what's going on out there, the craziness which is amped up. I'm not surprised that people like us have been called on to actually to bring this balance. Really, that's what. I mean, that's always been my knowledge about what has to happen right now. Is balance has to come to the fore. Excuse the pun on terms, but and there's a lot of, the only path now is internal, like and that internal then expression into the external. But my internal, I must purify, and I must be able to stand in front of the projection and the scathing and the absolute incited emotion which is going on out there in the wider world, and I must be able to stand true and strong and watch it with love and compassion, and I can empathize with it because I've been there. People are saying, how can certain people in organizations do certain things? I was in a culture like the military culture for 17 years, and I can actually put myself back. It takes me a bit to try and put myself back in that mindset, but can quite realistically, easily sit back and go, what was the paradigm that I was looking into the world of? And I can see why people make the decisions they do. And that ability to shift back into that paradigm, not be there, not be entrenched in it or even ensnared energetically in it, but just view it, allows me to actually have a lot of compassion and empathy for what a lot of people are facing at the moment.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there seems to be an element of being able to because like I'll watch a video. I think the last one I saw was a couple of days ago, and they went and this is in Australia. They went and get this guy was probably like late 20s, a blogger, Not remember exactly what he did, but it was social media oriented, and they came to his house. They were going to arrest him for insurrection or some bullshit. He hands his mother the phone, and they knock the 51-year-old mother over, and it's just what it is. But I think what I'm saying is that to be, especially someone like you, who's embodied warrior to the nth degree, and also been drinking that Kool-Aid and have the reflection that you do, to be able to stand in front of it and look at it as not as a feminine. I think it's a different path, but as a masculine who has fought, you know what I mean? Who has, you know what I mean? To be able to stand there and not get charged and want to go kick someone's ass. Now, another thing that happened, you just reminded me of, during this week, I had massive downloads and all that stuff. And one night I had there was 5 sequences of a lucid dream. And in the lucid dream, the main character, although I was there kind of observing and interacting, but the main character was a guy that was a big part of my life in my 30s when I was building organizations. He was a Marine. I had 4 Marines that worked for me, and we had a small crew, and it was very Marine oriented. So it was very much simplify, and they infused that. So, but also there was the distortion, and this particular guy he backstabbed me. Years later, he called me to apologize and emailed me to apologize and so on. So in the dream, he still had the persona of serving self, and you couldn't trust him. But in the dream, there was this little boy, and this little boy is about I want to say like 8, 9 years old, and he lives with a family and in an atmosphere that's just horrible. Like, I mean, everything, incest, drugs, the whole 9 yards, violence. So as I'm going through these dreams, I would wake up after each one of them and get the information and understand it. It looked like it was a fruitless effort on my part to try to rectify things. I was trying to do this and trying to do that, and your car breaks down and whatever, right? All this stuff. But the last scene was what happened was this guy who serves self, he went and got the little boy, and he took the little boy with him. And the little boy, he took the little boy out of the environment that this guy had immersed himself in and been born into and conditioned into. And without telling anyone, without even telling me, he just took the little boy, put him in his truck, and I could see the love that they had, the connection that they had made. And then I just woke up going, what the fuck was that? Wow. Like, I still don't get it, but there's something about what you said and about being able to stand there in love and compassion that's connected to that. And we're connected. So volley back to you.
Well, thanks for the volley. It's interesting you speak of dreams because mine have been very lucid as well. And not too long ago, I had one where I was actually around an old friend of mine who'd taken his own life. Now, this guy, to my understanding, is still alive, but it's representative of who he was. He was someone that back in my military training I really loved, and we got on like a house on fire. And because of what military training does, you're open, you're raw, and that's what they want. They want to break down the psyche. But the difference is they want to create it in their particular way. But it doesn't matter. You take yourself out of it, and you put yourself into the person doing it. It means you have these incredible bonds through this type of training. And anyway, he was in this dream, and then I move into this other place, and I get confronted by this young, very tall, very large artilleryman. Now I'm an officer and he's a soldier, so by military regulation, he should be acknowledging my rank, whatever. And this isn't a dream playing out. But physically he's much larger than me, and he's with a couple of other mates, and they're saying, be careful, he's an officer, and he doesn't care. And he's like wanting to give it to me. And so I'm just standing there, and I actually let him speak. Now, when I came out of the dream, I went back in, and I went back into that spot in meditation. I went back into that spot, and I called forth that artilleryman. Artillery in the military are very calculated, precise, very left brain orientated because of their job. It's very, very precise. So that's archetypally what they represent anyway. But he was this young, brash, unbalanced, heavy-handed man. And so I actually went back into meditation and let him speak. And what I got was this, I got the tirade straight at me. You've dishonored me. You've done this, you've done that. And he just went at me with this thing, because what I'd done is shut him down and actually created him. So as a young person, not understanding what was going on, he didn't feel heard. And that was that young aspect, that the young man in me, the young heroic man, not feeling heard or understood. And in this dream, he presented himself, that energy presented itself to me. And by letting them speak and not attaching myself to what was being said, and then I could actually trace him back. And in the end, he actually shrank. And there was mutual, there was just mutual acknowledgement of each other. And it was actually, it took me back to a lot of like memories where I could see why in my psyche that had actually occurred. And the peace that came to me, because like for a long time, when I reflected, I had some beautiful older men in my life around when I grew up, like Vietnam veterans, like a lot of military influence, clergy, so a lot of beautiful wise men, clergy. Mind you, I had a couple of beautiful, amazing nuns as well that were like off the charts, intelligent and beautiful and just nurturing. But I had I had this really eclectic, broad touch points of people when I was growing up. What I realized though is I never saw an emotionally balanced male. I saw strong, chivalrous gentlemen, but I never saw someone who would actually be strong, chivalrous, and here I am.
Did you ever see an emotionally balanced female?
Interesting question. No. Especially if you look at like in Australia, and I sort of know America for being there a couple of times, but I won't presume to know it. But you know, the outback, the country, you get the country can do a couple of things to you. It can soften you or harden you, depending on your choice. More often than not, it hardens. In Australia, we've got a depression rate of over 70% in the country. Massive amount of suicide in the country.
Really?
Actually, Dad was one of 4 major farmers in the local area. I know he's a priest and everything else. He was jack of all trades, but he was one of the guys. If you had a problem with your sheep or your paddocks, you'd go and say, "Alan, can I have a cup of tea?" And you'd come around, and Dad would have a chat with you, or Dad would come over and have a look, and he'd give some advice. You know, one of those elders of the community. Out of those 4, he's the only one that died of natural causes. The last one died at 72 with a 12 gauge in his mouth behind the shearing shed with his grandkids in his homestead. And it shockwaves through the community. But so there's a lot of depression out there. So it can harden you, or it can really soften you into the wilderness. And it's a real balance. And you know, conscious choice sometimes doesn't come. But with women particularly, there's a lot of masculine women in the country. Like who wears the pants in the relationship, you'd generally say who she does. You know, she rules the homestead. That's what they'll even say. She rules the homestead. And that actually does cause quite a few issues. So actually working with some of them, what we've actually found in unraveling all their wounding and their unbalance, a lot of the women go through this incredibly beautiful transitional phase where they so become intoxicated with their feminine again that it actually becomes unbalanced. And they get really scared about whether or not they become a lesbian. But it's actually just the unraveling of that energy until they come into this more balanced place where they end. But yeah, there's a lot of imbalance in the women as well.
Well, I mean, again, and I said it before, nobody's walking on water. If you look at Okay. Is there anyone balanced out there? Is Muji? Is Alma? Was Osho? I mean, I'm just my. Is there a balanced masculine? Is there a balanced feminine? What would that mean? Would that mean there's no distortion whatsoever in that particular gender energetic within themselves?
That's if you go to David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, then you're breaching. He talks as a scale of consciousness between 0 and 1,000, and up until 500, you're in the mind and you're operating basically in fear. If you could breach 500, you go into love, into joy, and then up towards enlightenment. 1,000 being Christ consciousness, Krishna, Buddha, that type of person. Now, there are avatars on the planet, that's known, and they have to be, otherwise human consciousness would collapse upon itself. And they actually transcend a lot of the masculine and feminine. This is what the Bible is talking about with androgyny. It's actually, and I mentioned the bridal chamber before, and the Gnostics. The Gnostics have a gospel called the Gospel of Philip, which is found in 1945, and it talks all about the bridal chamber, the merging of Christos and Sophia, the divine masculine and the divine feminine coming together in this place called the bridal chamber. And that in that one union, that union brings androgyny. And that's actually the work I'm doing internally at the moment. Or the predominant amount of work that I'm doing is this unification within the bridal chamber, and watching, when I got out of the military, like I had the uniform to identify myself and what I did, my job to identify myself. Major 3805476, James Malcolm Greenshields, ASC. That's who I was. So I leave the military, and what do I identify myself with? Well, then I shifted to my intellect. So I identified myself in my intellect. Now, in the scale of consciousness, that sits between 400 and 500. And what I'm then getting into is this: my identity has to have value and identify with intellect. So I must be able to provide some form of knowledge with value. And if I can't, then I'll go into justification, defense, or competition. That's just a psychological reaction that I'll have. And so what I've realized now is letting go of that attachment to the intellect has meant that I can sit in silence and witness better. And
Now say it again.
Have
what
to
was
know.
it? Was it detachment from intellect? Is that what you said?
Yeah, detachment.
That's right. I'm with you. I'm with you.
And know that what's going to come through me will come through me, not of me. And I don't have to egoically say that, it's mine, which is what I hear you speak quite regularly like that. It's come through you.
Yeah.
And Carl Jung, if you wanted another psychologist, he called that the individuation process, where these two come into union. So I think it's real, and we've actually been shown. If you look at the purity of a lot of the inner work that's been around for thousands of years, we've actually been shown how to do it. It's been kept away from us by a lot of the mainstream, if you want to know.
Yeah. Well, you're back. We're good. I heard everything. It just came in delayed. I'm sitting with the head, the mind, the heart. Intellect is somewhere between the head and the mind. Ego is straight head. Straight the head. Intellect is in between the head and the mind. Infinite intelligence is of the mind-heart fusion. Infinite or intelligence. I think, and again, I'm going to pull gender out because we're growing up now. We're maturing.
Yeah.
And it's not about that. That's an old paradigm. We can become more fully our whatever gender energetic we align with, which most of the time falls in line with our body, but that's changing in this world with these young people. So my point is, the intellect has served us. We're pretty fucking smart, right? But that's more in the head and less in the mind as we move and expand our awareness. It used to be very healthy, especially functioning in a dysfunctional paradigm. But now, as we've expanded and we've become to higher levels of alignment, the intellect is that part of us that's getting shattered.
Yes.
Because of the identities and the false personas that come with it. So, you know, if you're in a, let's just say we're in a new earth, a 5D type of atmosphere, then there's no talking. Okay. Why is that? Because it's telepathic. It's mainline intelligence. It's telepathic. It's intuitive. The intellect has to talk, right? I mean, so it's just not what it was based on the collective. What is the collective atmosphere? So I've been kind of sitting with that in the realm of masculine, feminine, in this kind of the same thing you're talking about, which is the inner marriage, in that inner sanctum, having conversations with my masculine and my feminine. Nobody else is, not Morgan, nobody. It's me on me. And it's an interesting conversation. And you hit on it. I feel like you really hit on it in the first 2 minutes as you were explaining what happened on the couch, and you were expressing words like rage and I guess anger and things like that, but in association with both. And when you put your hands together like this, that to me exemplified the only way it can work within ourselves is to understand that whatever's happened, both are equal parties, both sides. Through these internal conversations, I'm saying I was unconscious. I was unconscious. It's like the chicken and the egg. Who gives a fuck? Because it doesn't belong in this new paradigm. So if we're going to sit here and talk about the dross, right, then we're just wasting our time. Why don't we acknowledge that they both have equal parts of what we've experienced as well as our divinity, right? So let's do that, what you did in the first 2 minutes. And because to me, that's all there is to it. There is no point in discussing anything else because it's just the same old grind, and it is separation. You know, I don't think unity has to be the chore that it was 6 months ago or 2 years ago. And you could probably look at your marriage or look at your interactions and your relationships with men and women with the extent of the work that you do and the extent of the interactions that you have. But I don't know. Back to you.
I love everything you just said. I really, really resonate with it. Now, two things to throw in. Firstly, what I feel you're talking about is what I call radical forgiveness is required. It's when, and I think I've talked to you before about Janana Guzmão from East Timor, you know, how he was just amazing. It said we need to forgive and reintegrate. Now, the cool thing about reintegration, if you look at it as a word, one of the reasons why reconciliation in Australia will never work, and it's in my humblest opinions and love of everyone involved, it's the biggest walk you down the wrong garden path possible because of the etymology of the genesis of the word. To reconcile is to take someone back to a previous agreement. There was never an agreement in the first place, so there's nothing to go back to. That's why, in what I'm hearing you say, we require to birth something new, which is exciting. But what's required there from everyone is radical ownership in the first place, and then radical forgiveness. And the forgiveness starts here. And I saw a beautiful Indigenous person say the other day, you are not responsible for what your forebears have done. However, help us bring down the systems which still incarcerate us. And I went, boom. We're saying start afresh, clear the scale. And there was a beautiful, powerful statement said. It wasn't in anger and vengeance or anything like that. It's saying let's create. something. Let's create a new narrative, and therefore from the narrative, a platform of this radical forgiveness moving forward of self. And if I can forgive myself, I can forgive anyone. This whole adage that I was brought up, you can forgive, but you can't forget. That's bullshit. I mean, what lunacy is that? It's just justifying holding on to a grudge, in some moralistic template. It's just wrong. But anyway, so there's that. The other point I wanted to throw into the mix is you're talking about head, heart, and intellect, etc. Throw your genitalia into the mix, because that union is also so important. When you enter the bridal chamber, like the love will actually, it flows. One, Kundalini, they'll talk about it coming from the base of your sacrum, but the whole point is your genitalia is so intimately involved. It's the creation spectrum. So, and part of what this healing process in my own heart I've been going through is to heal the terrestrial wound between my heart and my terrestrial body, and forgiving the terrestrial body for its sacramental, it's how do I say it, violations of the sacred, and then also for me forgiving my heart for turning its back.
Yeah,
and that's like so much power in that. Like, seriously, takes you to the next level. Thanks. Morgan's saying nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts of him.
I don't know, but I'm just thinking nuts and bolts. I just
like nuts and bolts. But this is my point too about the if it's nuts and bolts of him, it's nuts and bolts of her, or however you want to refer to that genitalia. It's not about the specific genitalia; it's about genitalia, regardless of what it looks like. Because it's she told me an interesting story. She went to a mortuary, and how they had I guess must have been autopsy or something. There was a dissection. And the dissection of each genitalia, when cross-section, looked exactly the same.
No way.
Yes. Yeah, she saw it. When you cut it and split it, and it's like a cross. Now, there's two things like on what you're saying too. I'll give two examples. I was just talking to her, and we were talking about Facebook going down, and she was telling me, why it happened energetically. Strong possibility this whistleblower came out on 60 Minutes. So I got off, and I wanted to grab, a little bite and just relax for a second before the show. And I flipped it on, and I watched 10 minutes of it. And I went, this is bullshit. This is total fucking bullshit. They want you to think that it's being put before you that the fix is in motion. The carrot's on the stick.
Yeah.
Okay. When in reality, the entire paradigm, the entire realm, so to speak, is still the same.
Yep.
So you can take this all across the board. You can take this to Mars, Venus, masculine, feminine. You can take it to black and white. You can take it to so many different things. So I thought to myself, what's the best example? And I came up with this metaphor, which is actually literal as I'm sitting here thinking about it. So imagine that you have a world that was once Eden, and that somewhere along the line, when the intellect became the bigger player, there was artificial intelligence introduced first and foremost in the vessel itself.
Yep.
Retooled DNA and so on and so on. So this now means that you're not in the original state. So that means that everything that has come from the point of the alteration, the very first alteration, everything that comes from there isn't us. It's not us. And so the whole fucking story is about everything that's not us. All right. Now, let's say that, Adam and Eve had a baby. That was in the pure state. That was the original state. That was the original golden child. Once the alteration was made, none of the offspring was original state. This is why no one's walking on water. This is why nobody has the balance. Okay. Now imagine coming in and going, okay, let's make an original baby. Let's make one like Adam and Eve. Well, every vessel is already altered. Yet you could put it on 60 Minutes and say, we're going to present to you that we're making the original baby because we have all the spirit science and we can do it. The point is, it can't be done because you're still operating in this imperfect scenario, so it can't be produced. But what can happen, and this goes back to, what did you call it? A radical ownership, radical responsibility. This is what we've been doing. We're going into ourselves and we're saying, I own that I've been altered. But we do it by going, I own my shadow, and I'm going to 0 point these polarities. When the fact is, we could say one thing: I own the fact that I've been altered, but I also own the fact that there's a divine seed in me that, just by virtue of that awareness and my most powerful possession, my intent, my thoughts, my imagination, that alone and any words and actions that follow in line can alter my DNA, that can alter me, that can take me back to the original state and birth this original golden child. You see what I mean? I mean, we're trying.
What I'm hearing is you're saying going forward, not backwards, though.
No. Yes, going forward. Going forward.
You're going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going forward. Yes. And what I'm trying to say on one hand is, you can't take something to the original state when the womb is an alterated state. So it has to be, it's like reverse engineering. Okay. The cookie crumbs are there. And my point is, it's not like we got to go do it, but this is what we're doing. This is what we've been doing. This is what you've been doing. This is what I've been doing. And all these people have been doing. We've been doing the internal work. And I guess what I was trying to say in the metaphor was, we're arguing about the story. We're still identifying with the story. And I think there's been enough progress made that we can play to our strengths. And the last example would be what you said about the warrior. If I'm still in my altered state and identifying with myself, I'll be James. I'm identifying with the soldier that I was. And here I am years later with reflection and perspective. And I see these atrocities placed before me. I can be the original state. I can be my divine self and stand there in love and compassion. It is possible, or at least I can attempt to do this, as opposed to jumping right back into the fray, right? So as within, without. As within, without, as opposed to me going and playing out there and going toe to toe, mano y mano, and perpetuating it. I can stand here and be that. I mean, I just think that some of these things we've talked about all these years, go within, it's all about the present. They have new meaning too, because they're doable now. They're doable.
I think I read a beautiful piece written by Carl Jung from his abstract "The Answer to Job," which, if you think about Jung, he was an alchemist. He was psychiatrist, psychologist, but he was very much into the archetypes, which is what I'm actually hearing you say, like archetypal stuff. But one of the points that he was talking about is the opposite only exists because of the opposite. So Protestantism only existed because of Catholicism. They're brother sister. And they'd argue and bitch about each other. If you extrapolate this further, Osama bin Laden can only exist because of George W. Bush. Although I hear they're rolling him out as now a very elderly statesman. Awesome, good on him.
He got butchered the other day.
Oh, did he? So and again, there's just a narrative. There's just there's a loop, and
of course.
The whole point is, when what Jung is saying is, if you go back to the quintessence of something, if you go back to its absolute genesis, then what you find is the purity. But as you extrapolate out from that, you get distortions. And what I'm hearing you say is there's been distortion, no matter, where you can't stop. There's always this distortion. But if it's like one of the ancient symbols is the Ouroboros. Have you ever seen the snake circle fighting its own tail?
Yeah.
So what's that signaling is that's the whole alchemical journey where one goes through self identification. I'll put it in my terms, like one owns or identifies first that the wound exists, then owns it, because you might identify a wound, but you say it's not mine. It's bloody you. You're to blame. There's no ownership there. So ownership allows for the understanding of the wound to occur. That's the third stage. And then between those three, the fourth stages, the healing can then occur. I must first identify, then own it to understand it, to heal. Now, I'm not saying that it's just going to go around in a circle. There's a lot of stepping backwards and forwards through the healing process. But once the healing's occurred, I then transcend the wound, and then I integrate the wound, and I come back. And by integrating the wound, what I'm actually doing, the wound becomes part of me. It's no longer a wound. It's a building block. It's a foundation stone for my understanding of who I am and my expression of the divinity through me. And it's that circle. But the thing is, what I've realized at the moment is a lot of people are stuck in loops. They're going around and they're just back on things. And when I hear like they'll roll someone out in 60 minutes, I take that back to my inner work. And when I know I'm coming, like I'm just through this massive, big thing that's going on, to say it's a battle, but please excuse the terminology. So, this big turbulence within me in healing the wound, and I know I'm coming to the latter stages. What I'll often be presented with is a false finish, is a false settlement. And I've now become attuned to feeling it. Before, I never felt it. So what I would agree with the terms of the settlement. But the terms of the settlement were simply the octopus tentacle dragging me back into the old wound. So I was stuck in this loop until energetically I've been able to feel like, I see you. Okay, you know you're down, man. You know you're down for the count, and this is your last throws. You're trying to link me in. You're going to draw me in. I see. And they'll flare. Generally inside, I'll watch them flare. But this time I heard you speak before with those demonic figures, stand in front, and I see you, I witness you. And then the completion of the healing actually happens. And that's where I find this place of peace. And there's a deep understanding in me about, like, it's a deep knowing. It's not even an understanding. It's this deep knowing. But I always witness that last phase. They'll come back with the octopus tentacle to try and draw me in. Now, when I go through that, then I'm into a spiral, because I can go back into my local town of good old Mullumbimby, and I can see a similar incident, and I won't react the way I used to react. I'll simply observe with a smile on my face and a bit of compassion involved, and either just move away or navigate that specific situation very, very differently. And that comes because I'm in the spiral. I'm not in the loop.
Yeah, that symbol, the snake in the circle, and then with the mouth over the tail, that is the hero's journey. That is the hero's journey.
Exactly.
And see, the other thing about this, and I'm speaking in terms of where we're at, because I'm way past, for Todd, for himself, speaking about where we've been. And those loops are not expanding anymore. They're not expansive. They're not fertile fields of raw material for my alchemy anymore, because I'm speaking in terms of my opinion of all of this energetic field, or this vortex of frequencies that these people, these brothers and sisters that we make up, however big that may be, however small that may be. But the thing is this new space, it's a new alchemic laboratory. It has new tools that we've talked about, and that were prophesized, and that were written about, and that were only for those, as we were told. And yet I think there's more and more people understanding that it's available to us now. Part of, I'm at a point now where I only see the veil. The only veils there are here. They're not out there. The 60 Minutes thing that I talked about, that's not a veil.
No.
That's just a projection. The veil is here.
Yeah.
Can I teleport? Well, yes. But can I teleport if I'm worried about my passport? Now, I'm not saying that I am or I'm not. I'm just trying to make a point.
Yeah.
Can I step into this arena? People have talked about walking in both worlds. Maybe that's I don't see how that couldn't have had to been something that had to occur. Does it have to continue to occur? I mean,
the word weird in etymology, it used to be spelt WYRD, and that actually means foot in both camps. So if you were weird, you were living a life, like you say, you had a foot in both camps.
And what happens to those people? They would end up in the psych wards. They were told they were crazy about their families. So this is symptomatic of the people that come on the show and the people that we align with or can identify with. I just feel like that I look at what's going on around me, what's happening around me. What's it telling me? What am I understanding? The sequential unfoldment of my day, is it cohesive? Is it easy for me to read? Is it a smile or is it a frown? Am I light or am I heavy? I mean, it's just like this simplification of this new laboratory versus the complication of this previous one, where there was a lot of noise and a lot of chatter and a lot of distraction and a lot of distortion. So looking at this, like today, I woke up today going, Facebook's gone, and a friend of mine sent me a text. That's how I found out. She sent me a text and she says, Facebook, these are all down. And I wrote back, just coming out of my, just still in the weird, half out of the physical. And I said to her, it had to happen. In other words, I said something like it had to happen sooner or later. I mean, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time that we're all going to be put into a situation where we don't have a choice but to accept what we are. And because the only thing stopping us from that right now are these veils that we think that we've made these excuses, that the conditioning caused it, the programming caused it, my past caused it, my traumas caused it. That may be true, but we've come beyond this now. We have the ability to peel, but it's still the, white knuckles holding on, for dear life, these pieces of us that come from the intellect that gave us the most stature internally, right? And sometimes we presented that, and the other thing I was going to say too about what you said is that this knowing, you can't tell anybody. I don't care who it is. You can't tell them, and you can't be told. You can only be that. And when you do that, and I'm not saying I'm doing it, I'm just saying I get the trajectory. I see the stream. You can't tell them, and you can't be told. You just hit that frequency, and like a tuning fork, supposedly, theoretically, probability-wise, that it starts to ignite. And I still think we've given ourselves, and it's part of the reason that I'm on this type of tangent, because I feel like we've given ourselves far too little credit. far too little credit. There's magic happening, boom, 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 all over the place. It's just not where we're fucking looking. We're watching 60 Minutes, and we're watching Telegram for these channels that are telling us that I just saw it the other day, yesterday again.
Yep.
He'll be back in office in 60 days. Well, here we go again with your thing about what did you say? The octopus tentacle pulling you in at the very end, giving you a false finish.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're talking the mystic's path. The mystic's path is the mystic has to go on the journey on their own. And that's what I feel so many of us have been called to at the moment. Like the institutions that people looked to for safety, security, for identity they're crumbling. And the loyalty demonstrated by these institutions towards the people is like it's fading at a rapid rate, if not fractured. And one of the reasons is because loyalty cannot actually occur between anything other than sentient beings, between heart to heart. And I had to learn this the hard way. Being loyal to the military. I can't be loyal to the military. I can only be loyal to people, to other hearts that wear the uniform in that same organization. So that was a big thing. But the mystic path is something. It's an internal journey. And the old adage is, the forest. If you go back to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, he would say, if you enter the forest on someone else's on a path already trodden, it is not your path. You must forge your own path. Everyone has to. We can be told and we can be gifted little tidbits of guidance, like little beacons of information, which, and Campbell did this so beautifully, about the journey itself. And the hero's journey construct, I actually use it with our young program heavily. And just helping them understand that this is what they're going through. But you don't have to be a young person to go through the hero's journey. You're going through a whole series of hero's journeys simultaneously within your life. So understanding the process can be really soothing. But that soothing and security comes internally. It's not from an organization saying, it's okay, James, your employment's safe, or government saying, it's okay, James, we've got this thing right now. Everyone knows that's a crock of shit. But, well, if you don't know it's a crock of shit, they go back to the point. You're not looking inside. So the mystic path is really funny, and it's funny, but it's challenging. It's not quite regularly. It hasn't been nice. It's been at times completely untenable. But I'm alive, and I'm a better person than I've ever been in my life before, and I now salivate about the mystic's path. The other thing I wanted to mention is because we've been talking about intellect a bit. Some of the first people to awaken are non-intellectual people. Now, in their own mind, what they'll call themselves on the IQ scale is dumber than average, but they get it. And then they come out and they, as you say, they try and preach. Now, unfortunately, so often they try and preach and they're completely emotionally entangled, and they meet an intellect. And an intellect individual who's got such a rigid construct of the intellect and such a broad range of knowledge will shoot them down, call them conspiracy theorists and all that crap. And they'll cut them down. And that can be really demoralizing for them. And not only that, it creates false starts in the evolutionary construct of the shift of society. But these people are necessary. And I reckon quite a few people would listen to the show that might classify them in this themselves in this position. The key to these people is let go of the emotion and do what we're talking about. Go inside, and if you have an inner knowing, it goes beyond intellect. That's deep. You don't need to justify that to anyone. Live it though. Don't justify it to someone. Live it, and that's what every path's asking us to do. The Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. The fourth noble truth is it's your job. Number one, all life is suffering. Number two, suffering is caused by craving and aversion. The suffering is released. Number three, the suffering is released by the release of craving and aversion. Number four, it's your bloody responsibility to get off your ass. Here's a series of paths that you can follow, but you're the person who has to walk the path. So it's all been laid out before us. Whatever tradition you want to follow in its purest esoteric internal way, it's there. All the knowledge is there. But it's whether or not we get off our ass, own our shit, and actually integrate it, and then start living the thing. That's going to create. That's what I call beyond sustainable. It's harmonic shift. And that harmonic takes us into a next round. I love what you were talking about before when I saw you moving and creating forward. That's what I believe. I think we're creating something new, but at the same time, it's bringing the old. There's an amazing song artist called Xavier Rudd, an Australian man. If you listen to his music,
I've heard him. I've heard him. Yeah.
Have you heard Spirit Bird?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, next level song, man. And in it, it says, and please excuse me, Xavier, for misquoting your lyrics, because I'm an auditory person. I don't listen to, I listen to the music, not the words. I think he says something like, same, different people, same culture, doing new things, and I'm completely stuffed it up. But the whole point is it's the same spirit. It's the same thing there. We've got new people doing new stuff, but it's still the same beautiful heart space that they're coming from. That's what I take from his words. Probably should have just translated into mine first. Sorry, Xavier. But anyway, but yeah, it's such, whenever I hear that, I just like, my heart starts singing, going, yeah, we're not doing something new here, but we're doing it in a new way.
Yeah, it's a remix. It's like you're talking about with Campbell's Hero's Journey. There's infinite, infinite space for an infinite number of paths. And this thing too, like we created this, this is a very sophisticated realm that we all had a hand in. If you look at the hero's journey and you look at what you referred to earlier, now I haven't been in the military, but I played ball, and they use the same concept, right? They send you to they send you to spring training, and they run you to death and break you down, and they scream at you until you're nothing but a piece of shit, right? And so two things happen. One, they use a kind of they use a template of the hero's journey with ulterior motive, okay? Because now you're going to go on this path and you're going to become Superman and you're going to be, beating your chest, right? But it's got an ulterior motive, so the intention is not organic and pure.
Yeah.
And then you have the manipulation, again, ill-intended, I'm talking from a larger scale, of the camaraderie through going through something with you, right? Which is a powerful thing, but it's being tapped into, it's being utilized for that which pulled the cover over your eyes, the wool over your eyes, for the man, for that, whatever you want to call it, for that 1%, for whatever that is, whatever they're in control, whoever's running the program. And it's actually the same template as the energetic field with, other dimensional beings siphoning our energy. And how are they able to siphon our energy? In the name of love, right? Like, we're doing all these things and we're getting bent out of shape in the name of love, and all this wild energies flowing without abandon, in reckless abandon, and they're just pulling it off. So back to the snake. What's the difference between the manipulated template of the hero's journey that's utilized in the military, say, to break you down and build you up, right? Versus the original. The original one is still all self. It's still the snake eating itself. So the snake receives the elevation, the power, the love, the courage. It expands as it comes into a greater awareness of itself, symbolized by the snake eating itself. That's why I said it's the hero's journey.
What's the imagery when you were speaking that's just come to me, using ball or using the military, because they're dead right. Professional sport, any sports, they use the same process. It goes back to what I said about the octopus tentacle when you're just about to into the last throes of the healing process and you get lured back in, and anyone who knows the hero's journey will know that you come out, when you go through it, you come above the threshold. And as you come out of the threshold, so you've gone down into the darkness, the liminal stage, the chaos, the dark feminine. And I've let go of this term dark, though, on the feminine now. I just see it all as feminine. As I've let go of the darkness and the masculine as well, I see it all as masculine, because everything has its place. But and interesting, that one thing within me has just brought this huge balance between the two. But just before they come out, the last stage is the welcome home, the acknowledgement of the journey. But not only the welcome home, it's contribution. So the person comes with these newfound skills from their journey, and they have their rightful place that they now sit in to be part of an honored, grounded, loving member of the community, honored member of the community. But the thing is, people forget they don't go back to the old tribe. Then you never go back to the old tribe. If you do, that's the loop. It's not the spiral. Right. The spiral says you never go back to the old tribe, because you've shifted, you've changed, the tribe has to as well. And so you've already created something new if you actually come out of the threshold. But the imagery I was seeing when you were saying that is this last, before the completion, is this lure, and it grabs you and then takes you back into a falsified loop. And that falsified loop is any construct that they have created for you. The military creates you into this specific architecture. The game creates you into this specific player. If that's the case, then as you rightly said before, it hasn't been organic and it hasn't been self-found, which if you want to then correlate psychologically, you watch military people leave the military. More often than not, they'll have a collapse because the structure provided by the military is no longer there. Why? Because way back in their training, when they entered this loop, they were not organically allowed to complete the hero's journey and find true self. They were given self. It was, and if you want imprint, let's just use this language. There was an imprint of a false self onto the person. You remove that architecture, or you move the environment where that architecture is then relevant, and you fall completely over. How many times ex-military people try and be ex-military in a civilian world and get it thrown back in their face? It's so funny, because they're using this false construct. They haven't even seen it yet. What needs to happen in the transition, and it's not just the military. I've witnessed it with doctors, teachers, anyone getting out of some form of really heavily regulated framework or culture. What's required in this shift out of it, this migration out of it, is to actually go immerse myself back into the liminal stage and have a rebirth of that organic thing you talked about before, that organic self, understanding who I am outside Major 380547 James Malcolm Greenshields. Understanding myself as James. And that construct, let alone Greenshields, understanding myself as James and then living from that place, that's stripping intellect away, that's stripping everything away, and the only thing left is love. It's the only thing that in all the work I've found, it's the only place I keep coming back to is love.
Yes, there was a lot there. Yeah, I was just thinking something too on that whole programming. Oh, the false finish, the 60 minutes scenario. That the scenario of finding resolution within a dysfunctional, distorted realm. You have to go outside of the realm. So, like in your case, you're saying they build the structure, which is built on this hero's journey template, but they create the container. So the way it really works is you're in an environment that supports, as within, without, that you can go right back into that original state and rebirth and rebirth and rebirth. This is a situation where we have to go outside the container, which is unnatural in the container, but to find our natural state, our original state, we have to go outside of it. We have to, and that's where you're saying, you see it with teachers walk away from, or doctors walk away from, it's the same situation. So that's happening. That's happening. Another way I'm seeing it happen, we had a huge backlog of people wanting to come on the show, and Morgan came out with, let's focus on the hero's journey in August, and we've realized after going into it a few weeks, hey, this is what Soulogy's always been there. It's always been the strength of Soulogy. So you have that eureka moment, and then reassess, and you say, okay, let's try to hold that frequency and expand on that frequency, and the universe has worked with us, and it's occurred now. So I just finally just got a wild hair, and I just 200 plus emails, and I just sat here for 9 hours, and I made a form letter, and I put in it, thank you. This is not a traditional or typical talk show. It's a conversation, and we're looking for the human story, the human journey, the hero's journey, the transformation. And if your website or your skills or abilities or whatever comes up organically in the thing, then we'll talk about it. So I send out a bunch, like over 100, almost 150, and had some interesting replies, and I was excited because many of the people understood what it was and took it on. But here's the thing. So I just got one today, actually. The lady had said to me, I have messages from I don't want to give it away. So I have messages from a particular energy complex in the universe that we're all familiar with. Okay. And this is the second reply. And she says, I hear what you're saying, but I have messages, and they are important. They are very, very important. You know what I mean? And so it showed me that there's something that's been occurring in this community, which has got to be happening in the realm, which is these things that pull us back into the false finish are starting to be in the minority, right? In other words, we're not having to go outside of the box anymore, because we're transforming the box through our own personal transformation. She was still white knuckling it, holding on to her mission, right? Because this is what she was told, and it superseded her name. Like you said, I got to go back to James. I got to go back to Todd. If Todd wakes up and Soulogy becomes a job, Soulogy is my mission. I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to sacrifice. I got to do all the things that we did in the false template. Then that's not alignment. No. That's not the original template of Todd. Todd is, I should want to get up and do this. I should enjoy doing this. I should love doing this, right? And so when you were saying that, I was saying, like, the false finish. What is the inducement? What allows whatever? Why do we take the bait for the false finish? The bait is one of the identity factors that we took on in the first place. So it's just again, it's a comfort zone. It's a pacifier, that we got used to. And so for you to go, there's always this last part. Morgan will say, so when you clear something, sometimes it'll come back, and then it'll come back, like one more time to show itself really loud, so you will get it, or you won't get it, and it'll come back louder the next time.
Well, it also trains. It's like, if you learn a skill, you've got to go out and practice the skill. You can't just learn footy and train every Tuesday and Thursday and not play on a Saturday, because what are you training for? You never know if you've got the ability to use that skill in its practical application. This is life. That's just an analogy for life. What we're talking about is, if I train myself in emotional literacy, which is a trainable trait, emotional literacy, and that means that I can go through emotional literacy to emotional intimacy, and that's an experiential journey. That's something in which all the tutors in the world can help you with. But like we said before, you got to feel emotional intimacy. I can be there, but there's no point in it just on my own, because, excuse the dog, but like if I have emotional intimacy, I need people, because human existence is all about relationship, and E equals MC squared if you look at it. The whole point is it's relational, and emotions are about relationship. Spirituality is realistically about relationship. So, and yes, of course, the deepest relationship from the external is actually internal. I just see them as a reflection. What are you talking about, mate? In the last month, I'll speak for myself. Kirst can speak for herself. Kirsty, for those who don't know, I don't really refer to her as my wife anymore. We're probably beyond that archetype into spiritual growth partner.
What is the name now? Is there one?
Yeah, I don't know. But the point is, like, I've let everything go. And we've both stood on, and we've given each other permission to stand on the front door. Now, which way do you want to go? Do you want to go out or do you want to go in? Your choice. But you do it purifying your conscious choice. And I tell you what, it's been one of the most scary journeys I've ever been involved in, because I've thrown everything on the line. I've got a 15-year-old amazing woman. I've got a 13-year-old amazing woman. And I've got an incredible a spiritual growth partner in my life. And I've got all this stuff, all this support, all this love. But I walked away from it all. And I had to. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have identified that comfort zone you speak of. And that comfort zone meant that I wasn't putting energy into that place in my relationship, and it was dying of cancer. And it was permeating bigger than I'd ever seen it. I didn't see it, how deep it was. And I've been with Kirst for 22 years now. So it was like I actually took a couple of paces outside the door, and then I paused and I did a 360. And I said, right, own everything. Now, which way do you want to go? Because you can go any direction in 360 degrees, man. This is not 180. I don't have a choice, yes or no. I've got 360 degrees. And I tell you what, that created, one, excitement, a huge amount of excitement, but two, quite a bit of trepidation as well. And I turned it all back into my door. Because this is where I'm meant to be.
Let me ask you a question. When you walked out the door, did you make that decision from the heart or the head? And when you did the 360 and walked back in the door, did you make that from the heart or the head?
It's a great question. 2 ticks. The answers coming to me are, I was wounded in the heart space because of the head. So I walked out because of the head, and I needed to leave because of the head.
That's right.
And in cleansing the head, I actually come back into center, into the heart, and the heart knows it. I'm actually now living a life where I'm being drawn. I'm doing what I'm doing. I put all Emergent Leaders Foundation as a charity, doing everything we're doing. I put it over there and said, if I come back to you, I come back to you. But right now, I cannot see you, and you don't want me. You cannot see you.
That's
and
right.
You're cleaning your glass.
You can't make this shit up.
But now my heart resonates. Emergent Leaders Foundation is simply a vehicle, a medium for me to express what I do in the world. It doesn't matter if I align myself with that organization or as a construct or anything. And that organization cannot obstruct me, like, speaking and being from my heart, because if it does, then I violate my inner code. I dishonor anyone that I'm actually working with, and I don't like the word for, but working with, and I, more importantly, dishonor myself. So go back to what you said. It's not I haven't had a job for years,
right?
And I have a way of life. It's called a vocation in the old school. Vocation coming from the actual cloth. That was a word reserved for the clergy, because it was God's calling. And we used to think that the only medium for God's calling was the priesthood. No, it's not. It's bullshit. It's a complete fabrication to justify church and, the Catholic Church being the richest in the world. So You don't need the church, and Christ
Right.
wasn't a Christian, nor Buddha a Buddhist, nor
Right.
Muhammad a Muslim. They
Right.
expressed their divinity in the world, and that's when the work we do with people in what called harmonic leadership. One of the things we break them down is you don't have a job or a career, dude. You have a professional expression. It is the expression you have when you look outside the campfire and you give being of service to the world. And that comes from this place. Not your head is then conjoined to your heart. The head gives the intellect the framework to bring things to, and your genitalia, by the way, infuse the motherfucker with bloody beautiful creative energy all together. But I
don't know what you just said, but
it's not one to the other like some.
Yeah. There was I know that was epic. No, it was epic. It just did some weird shit, and it was like almost like it was like perfect. Like, so hang on, because I got a couple of things I wanted to bring up. One, because this thing about this metaphor, even though it's a literal, and in metaphor, the thing about, because this can be put every day, all day long. Walk out, you make a choice. Why do I step away? Why do I block someone? Why do I create? I am the separation. Okay. Well, you know what I mean? So, and I said, and this is not, Todd 101. This is just two brothers from another mother having a conversation. And this is why we do this. Inspiration, intuitiveness, whatever. So I said, did you make the decision from the heart or the head? And did you turn around and from that point make a decision from the heart or the head? And you said something really great. Okay. You said, I had, a pain in the heart, which caused me to make a decision from my head. Now this is gold. I'm talking to a friend last night. He calls me up. He's going through a lot. He says to me, can I ask you, like, what happened when 10 years ago? What went on? How did you do this? And I just start channeling. I never really put it into words. And the short of it was that I stepped out with a hole in my heart, pain, right? And I took on these what term did you use a minute ago? Well, I took on these, I was playing in these sandboxes of grief, prolonged sadness, anger, enviousness, and all this stuff. And at some point, I got fed up with that shit. And I realized last night in a much more articulated way that I never released the pain, because there is no way to release pain. Pain is love. Pain is dark love. Pain never goes away. And we try to make it go away and we try to avoid it. So we go play in these sandboxes over here that are grief, prolonged sadness, anger, and prejudice and bias and all the bullshit. Okay? I learned. I reaffirmed something in my soul last night. I realized that that I respect pain. Pain is my friend. Pain is love. And that when I try to reject pain, I have to go into this game and take on one of these faces of the ego or the head. And so I realized how powerful it was. He said, like, when's the last time that you saw it? I said, when Morgan and I knew we were going to have to be apart. It came to see me. And I went, wow, I haven't seen you in a long time. And it was a really tough situation. And so I don't know what's going on with Facebook. Morgan can't make comments. She said she got a message from Facebook. It's blocked. I think there's a lot of problems on Facebook. I don't know. Morgan, go to YouTube and make them. So where was I going with it? Okay, so I used this analogy. It just came out of my mouth. I said, imagine a father walks into a room and he's going to whip his son with a belt. What does the son do? He goes into fear.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into fear because of the pain that he perceives is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens if the father goes, oh man, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it? Well, guess what happens? He doesn't experience the pain, but the fear stays with him.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is just the big mask of the little mask of, all the ones I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We try to avoid the pain. And by virtue of avoiding the pain, we take on these false masks.
Mm.
And we sit on the pity pot. And this is the old paradigm. Pain is part of this process. Pain is the flip side of love. It's not, you can have pain. Pain is a great alchemical material. It's a foundational part of the human experience. It doesn't mean grief, and it doesn't mean these other things. It is a part of our, and it's just like me on the couch. I was on the couch. I had full body pain, like I must have COVID or I must be dying, something. And something in me just goes, I'm going to be the pain, my legs, I'm going to be the pain in my legs. And the pain went away. And then I lost it and it kind of came back and I did it again. And I didn't even realize this until last night when I was reflecting on it. The pain is part of it. It's part of it. Why look at an empath. An empath goes into a room full of a bunch of people, and what do you hear? You hear that they can't handle it because they're so sensitive. They pick up on the energy. They pick all of us with the heart. What is an empath? It is a heart. Feels pain. We feel other people's pain. Do we feel their grief? Do we feel their anger? Do we feel their jealousy? Do we become their anger, grief, and jealousy? No, we become their pain. And when we see love, we pick that up too, don't we? Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know.
I call that the difference between an empath and a sympath. Having worked a bit with nurses and people in the medical profession, you look at it, a nurse, more often than not, they'll go into that profession with this loving heart, the desire to heal, to help people, etc. Very regularly, there would have been some life experience where someone in their family would have been traumatized or whatever, and so they've gone into that profession as a reaction to that. Doesn't matter. These are beautiful people, and more often than not, they're very empathetic. But over time, the system, the job, hardens their heart. Now that's incorrect. That's actually my choice in the interaction. That is me allowing my environment to engage and determine my reality. So they don't realize this because we're not trained in this understanding, which is fundamental, psychology 101 if you actually think about it. But it doesn't matter. They're not trained to. So what they do is they don't actually understand energy too. And to be an empath, you actually need to understand energy. More often than not, what I witness with people who say they're empaths, they're actually sympaths. They'll take on the energy of another person. And that actually is really detrimental and can be very toxic to themselves. But what happens is that energy has to play out. So they'll play it out in their own anger, resentment, or whatever about, being pushed around and the system's all against me. And they develop these stories, as we all do. We all have a construct or a story construct, but they develop these stories where they become the victim. More often than not, a lot of untrained empaths, unmatured empaths become sympathetic victims. And it's you've got to understand, take away judgment from this. It's not their fault. No one's explained this and taken them through this journey on a deep experiential path, So I witnessed that you watch a nurse or a doctor go into it for a real reason, and then in the end it becomes about their ego because they have to do this procedure which is cutting edge, it's world first. We have to get this medicine which is world first and will solve everything. It's the God particle. The whole God particle discussion in science is exactly this one thing. But the thing is, every time they think they've found the God particle, they find the God particle actually then exists in different pieces, so it can be dissolved down even further. So this egoic chase, as you're talking about, that's not pure, that's not harmonic. Science is beautiful. Science is a way of understanding the universe. We've always had an aspect of science, whether or not it was now science is the religion, though. Science has become as dogmatic as the religion. Remember, in 1949, the guy who invented the frontal lobotomy, he was given a Nobel Prize for his scientific endeavors in 1949. It was the thing that was going to, is going to revolutionize psychiatry. Now look at what people think of frontal lobotomies. So, you know, there's this whole sequence of things that people just take tidbits of to make this story that either science is, you know, it's, again, anything which externalizes misses the path, because the path is actually internal. And yeah, religion has done its, you know, it's done its damnedest to keep everything external anyway. God is that old dude up in the clouds with white hair who's separate to you, and you can't touch him because you're sin incarnate. You have to go through an intermediary, the vicar. The word vicar actually etymologically means intermediary. And I'm not allowed to enter the sanctuary of the church because that's holy ground. That's actually my pineal gland in my head anyway. If you look at the church, it's the body. But I'm not allowed to enter that. I can't experience God. Well, the collective psyche shifted way away. That's medieval religion. We've collective psyche shifted and need to shed the skin of old religion, old spirituality, and old science is going to be, soon we're not going to be saying I caught anything from anyone. Soon we're going to be saying I resonated, I went into an entrainment process at a cellular level, at a vibrational pattern, and I resonated with dis-ease from that person and it embodied in myself. We'll understand that. So people already do understand that science, but that will become lay person's understanding. That will be taught in year 10 biology, because year 10 biology will also be talking about vibrational science. You know, there's going to be the shift, but we've got to, just like a snake, at the moment, you do not touch a snake when it's shedding its skin. It will go ballistic at you. But if it doesn't shed its skin, it will die. It's really, really imperative. Now, let's use another analogy from nature. The only bird which can attack an eagle, particularly in Australia, is a crow. And a crow will put its talons into the eagle behind its neck and then go at it. The eagle does not fight the crow. The eagle simply flies higher. It does what its natural born talent does. It flies higher. The crow has to fall off the eagle's back because the crow can't breathe anymore. That's the terrain of the eagle. So we could be out in the street and people can be bitching about, you know, anything which is supposedly going to happen in the next 2 weeks. I mean, the next 2 weeks you're going to witness this on a grand scale. The snake is shedding its skin. The crow is attacking the eagle. Be the eagle, soar higher. Know that the snake has to shed the skin. The snake actually metaphysically is all about transmutation anyway.
That's a powerful thing. I want to go back to a couple of things I've been holding on to try to work them in, but you still got a little time?
Mate.
You have a little time?
Let go.
You're like, what?
Don't hold on. Let go.
How long have we been on, mate? You got a little more time?
Oh, mate, for you, I got lost.
Yeah. I can't wait to get over there, man. You have no idea. You have no fucking idea. I love this thing about the snake, because don't fuck with the snake when it's shedding its skin. I mean, to me, that just blasts, stay in your own fucking lane. And not only that, because we're all shedding our skin, right? So it's like there's something about that. There's something about the part of this whole thing that's happening too, which is going to tie into what I want to ask you about, which is perfect segue. We're all going through this. We look for respect for our accolades and our intellectual treasures, you know. But what about respect for the fucking grind? What about respect for shedding our skin? You know, what about respect? Look, why is the camaraderie in boot camp part of it what it is? Because you're going through it together. We're all going through boot camp together, man. This hasn't been, you know, I mean, we've all met pain. We've all, you know, so here we go. Now, you're talking about what's happening the next 2 weeks. You talked about the door, the 360. We talked about the masculine and the feminine. We've talked about it many times. I know I've expanded from our. I'm sitting here a while ago listening to you, thinking, Jesus Christ, he must have thought I was a fucking idiot 2 years ago. Yeah, we've all changed, you know. And again, let's give ourselves some credit. But the war gene, you know, we can call it the war gene. We can call it the gene of debate, or the gene of someone's got to be right. Okay. So like what I was talking about earlier, this is a creation from the alteration. We became that. We took on these different things, these altered states that we saw as our parts of our identity. Some we welcomed and put on a pedestal, and some we damned ourselves by, you know. But still, to put it in simple terms, the war gene, it's embedded in all of us. You know, they're truly. How can there be a right or wrong when everybody has it, kind of thing? You know, and Morgan talks about, you know, clearing it. As long as, and this is just me trying to forward a conversation and you expand on it, I don't have answers. What I see is that I'm not 100% masculine divinity in my fusion of higher self and soul, or higher self and human. I'm not divine masculine. I'm not the epitome of it. If I were, then I would have a divine feminine perfection within myself as well. I don't see how you could have one without the other. We empty the container, it gets filled, right? If you have 50% whole on one side, you've got 50% whole on the other. Now, having said that, we got a war gene. And the war gene is perpetuated and lives on through the distortion of our, in this example, our masculine and our feminine. Or you could say other terms, but we'll just put it in those terms. Okay? Because that hits home for a lot of us. So, you know, in this metaphoric field of, you know, that I'm trying to create an image of, what does that look like now? You've been in Kirsty and Morgan and I too. You've been up front about the real connection, the real relationship, the real unions, you know, beyond the twin flame, golden, you know, fluffy love and light shit, you know, the real stuff, the real love, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the war gene? Can it be cleared completely, or do we have to be walking on water? You mentioned earlier in that very beginning where you did like that, and you made that statement about how they both own it, and this is within yourself, right? Conversation within yourself, which we know this journey is about having the same experience we're having inside ourselves with the external playmates and such. But like, where do you see that happening? Like, because I believe as the individual goes, so goes the collective. Because a lot of what you represent the embodiment of this masculine. You went you went for all the right reasons. You found out they were the wrong reasons. You almost got killed. You went through a lot of trauma, all that stuff, and now you're still on the circle, and you're coming around, and you're working with young men, and you're doing it, like you said, in the right priority of your life. I mean, you just got the momentum. Yet you seem to still, you check yourself. You're still learning. You're still getting the wind knocked out of you. You're still eating humble pie. Well, that was a crazy, weird question. But where's the war gene? Have we made progress? What have you learned?
A couple of things I'd throw at you on that one. Firstly, I heard the Dalai Lama one day say that I'm still learning how to meditate. And I love that. And it's humility. Humility is a grounding energy. It actually comes from the word humus, meaning earth. And its flip side, its shadow side, is self-depreciation, self-flagellation, where I won't allow myself to receive. Humility is actually receiving energy. It's when I understand in honor the beauty of what I've actually been involved with, and the honor of the part that I've played in this process. So that aside, Buddha also, remember, Buddha never attained enlightenment. Buddha realized he was already enlightened.
Right.
And if you actually understand that one statement, I've been sitting in meditation on this one aspect for some time, and just realizing that, I've had some very amazing things occur in my life, metaphysically, physically, everything. I said to you before, one of the biggest shifts in my mindset that caused such an escalation of rate of knots of my growth journey was when I went from being a human having a spiritual experience to understanding I'm a spirit having a human experience. And that, it's not just flippant words, man. That caused a complete decimation of the way I viewed the world and the way I live. And a reconstruction and part, I've got no idea how to do this because I don't know. Someone's not standing there saying, I'm another spirit having a human experience. This is what you do. This is a job, James. You've actually got to forge, talk about that pain. I've got to forge my way through. Remember, an electricity current, yep, sure, it has resistance in one way, but it has to flow with resistance. Like, resistance is about a part of growth. It's a natural part of growth. It's not a negative to growth. Which brings me, I suppose, to the war gene. Look at the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, etc., in epigenetics. He's one of the founding guys into stem cell research. And his point about epigenetics demonstrates the fact that genes turn on and off because of our environment. Over 90% of all disease is environmentally stimulated. And the CDC, your Center for Disease Control, will even stipulate that 85%, it's on their website, 85% of all disease is emotionally related. And emotions about it are caused by an interaction to our external. Therefore, it's our perception of our external environment. So let's bring it to the war gene. What it's saying is these genes, they're like light switches. They're all up in your DNA. They can be turned on and off. Now, when we consciously go into the unconscious and we unearth that these series of things are turned on, we can actually bring them up and realize why they're turned on because of everything we've talked about in the last hour and 40 minutes. Because of all that stuff. But we can then, by doing that internal, we're actually changing our genetic code. We're actually switching on and off. Now, the point about the war gene is it comes from the law of polarity, which is the law of opposites, which is everything is the same, but from a different degree. So as soon as I own the control issue, then I can realize that I'm not as trusting as I think, but I've got to own trust. Trust and control must be both owned, and the further you pull them apart, the more strength you actually own them for, and then all of a sudden go through the internal process of internal forgiveness, you can ascend to the place of knowing, which completely goes and dissolves the need for control or trust.
Yeah.
In this place of knowing, it just is. The thing is, control and trust are in the matrix of safety, because that's the paradigm that I have. I have to have safety. So if I realize that I don't need to be vulnerable, I'm not vulnerable to you, Todd. I just am me. I'm just James. There's nothing you can do to internally violate me unless I take what you've said and stab myself with it. When I realize that's the power that I have, I don't need to grab what you've said and stab myself with it. You can completely diametrically oppose what I've just said, attempting to invalidate it. And I can sit here and go, yep, cool, that's an interesting point of view. Hadn't seen that. Yep, cool.
Yeah.
And then I can objectively go, yeah, I see what you're saying here. And that actually might open me to a different growth path to the next level of paradigm. Or I can see why you're saying it. I can see the wound that loop you're still in. And I have compassion for the loop. I don't have to change you. It's not my job to change you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I observe you with love, compassion, and understanding. And I know why I'm engaged in that situation. All of a sudden, I'm not at war with you. This is what we talk about by going beyond resilience. Resilience is a idolized concept in a warmongering society of lack and competition. It does not exist in a harmonic, thriving society because resilience requires an adversary. And when I don't have an adversary anymore, the flow goes. Someone tries to get into an argument, and all of a sudden you start having a good old conversation with them because, oh, yeah, I see your point. Wow, I've never seen that before. And then they try and pick you again. And, wow, I didn't even see that. It's like the old meme from Keanu Reeves. If 1 + 1 = 3 for you, then have a great day. Awesome. Now, I threw that out one day in a workshop. I said, yeah, Keanu Reeves once said, 1 + 1 = 5. Then have a great day. That's awesome for you. And someone said, no, mate, it was 1 + 1 = 3. And I started laughing. He didn't even
there you go. That's a good one. That was funny. You said disease is attributed to an emotional
wounding, suppression.
Okay. And this is my point because I don't just look at disease as a physical manifestation in the body. It can be my external environment. It can be, a lot of things. Quick example, when I went through last week and other times, people will tell me I'm psychically attacked. And, I don't buy it. I don't buy it because of my own journey, but I respect it. I respect that narrative and that description, and I get it. But me in my essence, I can't. So somebody asked me, I had this conversation a few months ago. I remember having this conversation privately, and I don't remember who it was, I was talking because they were asking me about dark and light. How can you say there's no evil? And I told them a few stories about my own journey and how I just opened my heart. How can you do that? How can you just let something in your heart? I said, because I trust. Now, I'm not saying that in past incarnations, I haven't opened my heart and got my neck cut off. But my trust is forever, knowing that I come back, knowing that I don't die, and so on and so on and so on. So I think this thing about trust, if you don't trust the universe, or you can only trust the universe as much as you trust yourself, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay.
Here's one thing for you, though.
Yeah.
Remember, evil is not dark.
Yes.
What we've done is taken two terms and we've conjoined them, and that's an assumption, actually presumption. And it's not true. It's an invalid presumption. Dark is the mystics will tell you, dark is the only existence. Light is temporal. Light comes out of darkness, which is why you got to go into the darkness to find the light to bring it out. But the light will shift, change, and then it will go back into darkness. That is not evil. There is evil. There is. Like I walked down and in a meditation, I don't know if I was telling you about it the other day when we last spoke, but walking down the main street of Mullumbimby, and I saw these energetic, dark electrical fields, and I was negotiating. And I saw them. I just saw that's evil. Now it's not good nor bad.
Well, I
it's
got
not
you.
Dark nor light.
I got you.
It is. And when I can do that, it's like Voldemort. It's he who shall not be named. You actually empower the thing. It's like, I call you. Okay, I see you. That energy, I see that energy, which actually completely disempowers the energy. Go back to pain. As soon as you give pain a voice, You go into it. This is what the
That's right.
there's a Vipassana. I don't know if you've ever done it. A 10-day silent meditation retreat. They will
No.
teach you to go to scan your body to go to the source of pain, and you don't go to the source of pain. You go right to the source of pain. You then go into it. You become it, and you come through and out to the other side.
Yeah.
Now, pain management in like anesthetists and that type of whatever the science is called, I can't remember off the top of my head. But pain management, they've realized, and some of them are realizing they're actually doing it the wrong way. And so they're trying to avoid pain. Go back to what you're saying. It's this whole mentality. Medicine has to taste nice and take away pain. Well, the pain's got a message. So a lot of them are actually looking to particularly the East, because of its traditional meditative things. But that's incorrect. The West has had a meditational history for ever. But they're going to meditation and other techniques which can be empirically analyzed to gain the source understanding of the technique to actually utilize in pain. They call it pain management still, instead of what I reckon it should be called pain marriage. When you bring yourself into that union with it and you become one with it, all of a sudden the energy transforms and transmutes. And this is what I do with my pain, be that physical, emotional, spiritual, doesn't matter. I go into it. It's like I imagine myself walking up to a bubble, and the bubble is it. And then I watch everything as I walk up to the bubble, and I reach out, and everything's like now on steroids. It's been turned up because it's all the intensities there. I touch the bubble, and then I go into the bubble, and I become the bubble. The bubble is it. And I sit in it. I don't run from it. I breathe. Right. I focus on my breath, and I become it. Now, it will always have a message for me. It will always have a message for me. So, what I do with my mind, I imagine an envelope come in, and I pick up, and there I open up a letter, and there it is. You've abused me. Well, I don't know where that came from, but those words just came. You've abused me. And I go, okay, I might have to do a bit of meditating after this one. And I go, okay, so please, I'm not understanding you. Please explain. I turn the paper over, and there'll be another message there, and I can own it. I own it deeply, and then only then can I actually step out the other side. And when I step out the other side, there's this whole new relationship to the experience.
Yeah,
it's like truly magical.
If you look at the experience I had on the couch, those entities were my pain.
Yeah.
Now, if I had went into fear, they would have been in, they would have flared up more. They would have expanded, right? And so that must have been some kind of correlation between my physical body and that, as I'm listening to you. And the other thing I was going to say about the emotion being the root of dis-ease, and dis-ease being well beyond the physical manifestation of what we call illnesses in the body. See, they didn't say pain does not cause those things. The fear of pain is what causes it. And fear causes these emotions, right? That's the mother, father of these emotions. All right. So this is my point about the fear. I mean, about the pain, embracing the pain. If you take a kid to the doctor and they pull out a big fucking needle, and the kid does what? Because I did it as a kid. I freaked the fuck out. I'm in fear every single time. Why?
Yep.
The reason was because I never felt the pain, because I was always feeling the fear, which wasn't even there, right? So it's the same thing as the dad walking in with the belt. What happens? And I was telling my friend this last night. I got this one kid. This kid is a soul grandmother, 3 years old. And she's, I know already. I can see she's seeing dead people. And she's just got that essence. And she was a shit, like a lot of these people that we describe, right? These people that don't fit in. And I did one day. I said, I'm done. I've had it. You pushed me too far. Bend over. Got the belt. Whap, whap. She didn't move. She didn't budge. She just turned around and looked at me. Didn't say a word, kind of like, is that all you got? I knew in that moment, this kid's 4 years old, old soul. I knew in that moment, I learned something in that moment.
Yeah.
I learned that she was not afraid.
Yeah.
And I will take pain any day of the week because I'm not going to play in those sandboxes of fear and the self-deprecation and the self-sabotage, the prolonged sadness, the grief, the victim consciousness. Let's call it what it is. Pain is not victim consciousness. Pain is a one single word that is again, I'd love to see the etymology of that. Because if you think about it from the higher perspective, why do we come to be a human? To feel. Well, what do you feel more than anything? Love. And in the name of love, pain. Right? So this distinction between, really and honestly, before 24 hours ago, I probably would have always associated pain with everything I just mentioned. But the fact is, something happened to me last night talking to my friend, my brother, and I just went, wow, that's actually what got me through Morgan and I being apart.
Yep.
It was anchoring back into that friend that didn't, and were there tears? Was there? Yes. But it was my go-to. And when I walked the streets, it was my go-to.
Yep.
It was a badge of honor. It was a badge of power,
Yep.
and it was also a core, a birthing of greater courage, greater love, greater open-mindedness, greater self-responsibility, and everything, the virtues of that this experience can offer us if we're trying.
2 points to that. One, Morgan mentioned before, she asked when I said you abuse me, would I go into a process of asking it what I abuse? The simple answer is yes. So I give the abused a voice, and that means that that in the voice, then I can actually again own that aspect of self because it's all my internalized things. I've just got a message down the bottom of the screen for the first time.
I just put it there. Do you mean
really? Dude, that is sexy, man. That is damn sexy. Look
you didn't know we could
go.
do that? We could do that. Yeah. I've just been in. So I'm trying to, because you cut out. So I just want to say, so someone says to you, "You've abused me," that you go into that process of that.
So
you
remember,
have that you have abused yourself. Oh, if someone says to you, "You've abused me," so I say that to you. I say, you've abused me. Now, do you go into the process? Do James go into that process that you've abused yourself? I'm not really clear. Are you clear on it?
So, yeah. So I'm going to take it to the construct of me being in my healing space, my bubble, where I'm in the pain. And I said, I open this envelope and there's the message of the pain. It says, you've abused me. So what I will I'll give the abuser a voice. And I will say, okay, I've abused you. How have I abused you? Go back to that young artillery guy example. I said, okay, he said, you've abused me. And I gave him a voice. And I understood that, yeah, I had actually, I'd left him on his own. He didn't felt like he belonged. And I kept pushing. I kept trying to belong. And I kept fabricating a belief that I belonged when I didn't belong. And so this energy in me grew and grew and grew. And so I needed to own the fact that I was an abuser. Why was I an abuser? Because I stayed in an environment because of a mental need for external validation and everything like this, proving myself, you name it, it was all there. That's why I stayed there for so long. Now, and then I can own that. And there will generally be a release of emotion at the same time as owning. But the thing about emotional processing is that if you have a big emotional release, you generally haven't got the actual lesson. The lesson will come in an aha moment, which is actually absent of emotion, because the emotion is in the process. Mm-hmm. The emotional flow is in the process. The clarity and the message, or the gift, as I call it, comes post-process. So the deep shift is like, oh, fuck. Yeah.
Yes. That's
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
what it is.
And it's like, I'm not going to do that. I'll never touch that shit again.
Yeah.
I get you. There's no emotion. It's just like, no, there's this inner, like my heart has just spoken. The other thing I wanted to mention in reference to this point you were just talking about pain is I witness a lot of people become addicted to the pain. And they're in that victim cycle that you talk about. You're talking about ascension through the victim cycle, which has
Yeah,
become
you're right. That's a good point. Yeah.
through, and you have to own the pain, go into it, and that's why I called it a marriage. It's the words that just came to me, that this marriage with it, to actually go in through it, learn and transcend it. And then what will actually happen is you're releasing so many different aspects of life. You'll notice a physiological, emotional, mental, and a spiritual effect by that one thing. But if you've become addicted to pain, which so many people are, great example. It was a study done, I think about 20 years ago in the state of New York. And they were looking at African Americans in poverty and white rich people. And in the state, they did this a study into who was more likely to do something to shift the situation for the better for the African Americans. And they found white rich people were 17% more likely to do something to shift that effect than the African Americans. And it simply comes, what they establish is, because go back to that badge of honor, that a lot of them wear that poverty as a badge of honor. Don't take it away from. If you remove that poverty from them, they no longer have an identity. And this is with the Vietnam veterans. They came back, and a lot of them then started to wear post-traumatic stress as a medal of honor. In its weirdest sense, this is what they were doing. And no matter what work you tried to do with them, you couldn't help them heal. Notice I didn't say heal them. I said you couldn't help them heal, because it's their healing journey. They've got to take off that badge first, which is identity. And there is so much pain associated with that it's in a place where, yeah, sure, it still hurts, but it's managed and it's known, and it gives them a sense of being alive. And you can't take that from a person who's in that construct. They actually become fanatical about pain, and they'll then develop a whole heap of stories and everything and narratives as to why, they are like this. It's not just Vietnam veterans. I just use them as a very easy example to use. I notice it with firefighters. I notice it with men. A lot of the men's work that I do, there's so many men that like it. And funny enough, I've even had women turn to me and say, I can't have post-traumatic stress from domestic violence. You had every right to have post-traumatic stress because you were hit by a roadside bomb. I was just hit by my husband. And I go, I was trained to go into combat. Like roadside bomb, that's just called, a workplace hazard. You had someone get down on their knee and ask them to ask you to spend the rest of your life with them and create a family in a safe place and everything. And they completely violated everything and hit you. Right? That means to me, in my mindset, you've got more reason than I do to actually have post-traumatic stress. But they couldn't see that. They couldn't see it because they this good girl complex, which actually didn't allow her to actually own the fact that she could feel.
PTSD. I've been thinking
Post-traumatic
about
stress
that.
disorder.
I've been thinking about that for these last 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know, and whatever. That every human has PTSD. Every human has had episodes that have skewed their perspective. So my question to you, because I know you're well versed in PTSD, does PTSD skew? And let me just say something about PTSD, at least in my own right. I look at PTSD now as the same way I do ADHD. I look at PTSD as a positive characteristic or awareness of which further identifies me as far beyond just as human being. Okay. But in terms of like boots on the ground where the rubber meets the road, human interaction, PTSD, and I don't know to the degree you do by any means, would have to eschew the perspective. In other words, we all have different perspectives. We all hear things differently. But I would imagine that it could dramatically alter perspective.
Totally.
In what?
I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder in its rawest form is when your whole framework of life is disintegrated, be that in a nanosecond from a car accident, or a few minutes in a rape situation or something like that, sexual abuse, roadside bomb. But anyone who knows me knows the roadside bomb was only part of why I went into post-traumatic stress. It wasn't actually, wasn't the impetus. But it's when your framework of life, 7 years of workplace harassment, I worked with a person, that they developed exactly the same symptomology under the clinical aspect of what post-traumatic stress is. So let's just remember, though, post-traumatic stress is a 1985 diagnostic term. It is talked about in the Book of Job. In the Civil War, it was called soldier's heart. The First World War, it was called shell shock. In the Second World War, it was called battle fatigue. Yeah. And then it was diagnosed in 1985 after the Vietnam War as post-traumatic stress disorder. If you look at those terms, they move further and further and further away from a person's heart space. Now, post-traumatic stress has a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspect to it. And there's a lot of work being done in the States more than anywhere else in your spiritual realm because of your heavy, still heavily influential Christian movement that includes the military. A lot's been done into what they call the moral wound of post-traumatic stress, but it's you can go down that path. It's slightly bigger than that: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Now, the thing is, the way I describe post-traumatic stress, you're driving down a motorway and you've got a big bridge in front of you. All of a sudden, boom, the bridge blows up in front of you. Now, you can't get across, but what happens is the police run out and they set up a detour. Now, you can't go at 110 kilometers per hour down this detour. You've got to go at 40 kilometers an hour. Now, if the rubble is sorted out and the bridge is rebuilt within 3 weeks, and I'm actually talking neurology here as well, because this is actually neurologically what happens in the brain. But if the neural connections or the bridge is rebuilt in 3 weeks, then you've experienced trauma. However, you won't experience post-traumatic stress because the bridge is rebuilt and you're back up to 110. It's all good. Here's the amazing thing about what's called neuroplasticity, which is a concept that's only come into the public domain in the last 8 years. Okay, possibly 10 been talked about. It's been around for quite some time. Actually, it's been around since Rene Descartes in the 16th century, but it's been around for a while. The thing about it is, if that bridge, if the engineers come out and go, too much money to rebuild that bridge, what we're going to do is we're going to upgrade this detour. So all of a sudden you go from 40 kilometers an hour to 60 to 80, and all of a sudden the detour is now 110 kilometers an hour. That's called neuroplasticity. Your brain has rewired itself so it actually will now function. And there's an incredible amount of research into what I'm talking about. It's fascinating. So what that's showing is previously, especially even 10 years ago, it's still post-traumatic stress in the psychiatric fraternity is a very debated concept. They don't have a recognition about the fact you can recover because they've got no standardized definition of it, and they must have a standardized definition to move forward. And they don't actually recognize post-traumatic growth. We've got definitions for both. They're both professional and personally experienced. But anyway, that's an aside. The point about it is that your brain rewires. So you therefore can shift and adapt. This is called a complex adaptive or complex creative system in which it adapts and it can learn. It's a learning experience and a learning and healing experience, and then keep going forward. Bring this into concept of what I say, mate, in relation to bringing it back to what you said about everyone goes through post-traumatic stress. I say everyone is a veteran of something. Everyone has experienced trauma to some degree. Right. Now, people have different propensities to the level of which they'll experience the trauma. Some will experience it very highly, some won't. Some will attract massive situations into their life because that's their soul calling. Now, some of them who've gone through massive situations have this incredible creative, adaptive ability to see the light, to heal, see the light through everything, and then create this incredible environment. They're magical, magnetic people to be around. And you look at them and go, you've been through what? No way. You can't have been like who you are. You cannot have been through that. Makes no sense. I've got one of the women in my life at the moment who's an incredible partner of mine in our spiritual growth journey. She's actually, I just came out of meditation before your call with her. I can't see, she's gone through so much trauma with childbirth. What people don't understand is women will actually get post-traumatic stress from childbirth. And the trauma of childbirth will actually then flow over into postnatal depression. And they're not identifying the trauma. They're just trying to treat the natal depression. You can't, most depression actually has trauma underneath it. And you can't treat the depression without treating the trauma. Treat the trauma, often the depression will abate and clarity will be gained by the person and they'll get momentum in life, which is the opposite of depression. Depression occurs by stagnation. You don't get depression when you're in momentum. Yeah. So this is what I looked at her the other day and I said, I don't see your trauma. I can't see it anymore. I just see this radiance, this beauty. That's all I remember. And I have to stop and I have to actually go back to, say, a couple of the workshops that she's been in that I've run, where she was deep in some serious trauma we were helping her through. And I go, oh, yeah, that's right. You were there. But it's not in my cognition generally because I have this picture. It's like Kirsten, my relationship. But there was a time where she walked on eggshells in my relationship because I had such deep post-traumatic stress. I struggled to remember that because what I've done has been able to become this creative, adaptive system, or network's actually a better example, creative adaptive network, which is learning, integrating. Why the hell am I on this conversation with you talking about this right now, brother? I would not have been doing that if I wasn't, bang, 23rd of April, 6:10 p.m. local Iraqi time in Iraq, hit by 20 kilos of TNT in a roadside bomb. And yeah, having a soul's choice to leave the planet or not. I chose to stay on the planet. Why? Because I know that there's more in me for the planet. That experience has catapulted or butterflied effect into me having this amazing conversation with you today and being able to give to whoever wants to listen and hear this information. Yeah. So that's part of this creative network.
Like a boss, man. Hey, so what's that's all, man, that's some I'm gonna have to replay this. So what was the original term, heart, for PTSD? Heart what?
Soldier's heart.
No. Oh, soldier's heart. Okay.
Yeah.
Which implied what? Like super empathy or what?
A soldier's heart. So seat of the soul being the heart, it's a fracture of the soul.
Oh, I get you. I got you. Okay. And
broken heart.
I want, how do they refer to it in Job? You know?
Mate, I'm not going to quote the Old Testament on you. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Thou shalt not sin. No, I'm kidding.
No, Job's an amazing book.
I know, dude. When I went homeless, that's the first thing I kept hearing was it'll be, I don't know what it was, the story of Job. And I knew the term Job, patience of Job. But if you I'm living that story. You know what I mean? There was a reason that was coming in intuitively, but just another hero's journey, I guess. And I didn't mean that everyone, well, you explained it better about everybody's had has had episodes, traumas, right? And proportionate to their life experience. But I never experienced anything like that until I went on the street.
Yeah.
After successive traumas. And then what I also found interesting was I put myself in situations, many situations, deep experiences that were not comfortable and that created or added to the PTSD. So things that weren't done to me, but things that I did to myself. And in examining that, why, it was to feel something. To feel
Yes.
what? To feel pain.
Yes.
I couldn't find love. I'd already, gone to the mat too many times. So I went, and again, this is all no coincidence to go into that last night that I did with my brother, and but noticing in myself something might come my direction, and I see it entirely different than intended.
Mm.
And because of I wonder to myself about myself, is this a byproduct, or is this PTSD? You think of PTSD like a dog that gets hit too much, and the owner walks in the door and he's already in the corner, even though the owner's just walking in to grab something. So something would be presented to me, and I would, by observation terms, overreact. But in reality, I was seeing something much more enhanced than intended.
Mm.
And I in my own journey, and still working with it, is tracing that to the PTSD, or byproduct of it. Certainly a byproduct of the traumas and stuff. But
it goes to your point about you see things differently with trauma.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, yeah.
There's a really big point you've made, though, is it's like people who go into cutting or physical self-abuse. It's because they're numb. They're not allowing themselves to feel. And I've worked with a number of people that until they will allow themselves to go through the emotional processing, there is no cure.
Yeah.
They can go on.
We just knocked off.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we got knocked off.
That's because we've been gobbing off for two and a bit hours.
I enjoyed it, man. I love you, man. I'm on this thing now where it's the magnetic force of the heart.
Yeah.
I sent Morgan a message today, and magnetic force of the heart, the magnetic force of the heart, pure love. Oh, we came back.
You're back.
Evidently. Looks like we're
I know
back.
you're all staticky again.
Oh, yeah. So let's just call it a day. It's only been 2 hours and 17 minutes. Kirsty's going to kill me.
Ha!
2 hours
I'm a
and
bladder
17
better
minutes.
than Kirsty.
Huh? It should be what? Let's see. Can you hear me? Oh, we're done.
Sort of, but you're still mechanical like you were before.
Yeah, they got
staticky.
knocked. It came back on, but yeah. All right, man. Tell Kirsty, give Kirsty a third eye kiss from.
Love you.
Yeah,
you're
love
awesome.
You, man. I love you, man.
Yeah.
I'll be there, man. I'm coming. I'm fucking coming. I'm telling you right now. I don't give a shit how I got to do it. I'm doing it. I don't care. I'm going to make it happen. I'm just,
Catch you, brother. Bye.
Yeah. All right. See you. Bye-bye. Let's see. Wait. Still working?